everybody. Welcome to the Buckeye Weekly Podcast. I am Tony Gerdeman here, as always, with Tom Orr. Tom, how's it going?
Well, Tony, it is our Michigan Monday show, so it is time to talk about the Michigan Wolverines, who had a dramatic win over their in-state rivals, the Michigan State Spartans. And Tony, I think the big takeaway for me at the end of the game, this is one of these things that just popped into my head, and I had not thought about the Big Ten Bowl selection order much this year. We've been talking about the college football playoffs quite a bit, have not talked about, it's the Citrus Bowl, and then it's this, and then it's that. I feel like Sharon Moore had the likelihood of having a jar of mayonnaise dumped all over the top of his head significantly increase on Saturday night in the Big House. So I guess that's, good news for a certain subset of fans, maybe? I don't know.
A certain subset. I'm not sure if that subset is Michigan fans, who or Sharon Moore himself would. When you're Michigan, you're coming off national championship. Is no bowl better than the Mayo Bowl? Now, granted, you've got to win the Mayo Bowl, and it's easier said than done. So maybe go and just choose not to win. Would be you get all that practice time in and be like, that last drive, fellas, we're taking a knee. And be like, Coach, we're down by 4. No. We've gotten what we wanted out of this trip and out of these practices. We don't need to press things. Don't want to get anybody hurt. So let's just go ahead and take some knees, go back home. And, we had a good time. We don't want to push things.
You don't normally see the victory formation in the first drive script, but listen, this has been an unprecedented year in a lot of ways, Tony, so you can't rule it out.
So here we are talking about Michigan's 24-17 win over Michigan State, rivalry game. And the one of the many interesting things from this game is that Michigan State outgained them. Michigan State was 8 for 15 on third down, but they were 2 for 4 in red zone, missed a field goal, were completely empty in another one. I'm not saying they outplayed Michigan because they didn't. You had Aiden Childs with a fumble in there. But I think it was good to see Michigan. They went back to Davis Warren, and then in the second half also included Alex Orji in the running game. But you saw Michigan do enough and build some confidence and make some plays and get creative on offense enough to get a win. But it was not looking good early when Michigan State drove right down the field the first 2 drives. And you're thinking, this is just going to be a continuation of what we've seen from Michigan the past couple of weeks.
Yeah, I mean, you can go through a whole lot of stats, and Michigan State won a whole lot of them. And Michigan State won EPA per play, expected points added per play. That's something that we talk about on the show sometimes. Basically, they were consistently a little bit better on just about every play. But man, this was a vintage Sparty no game. I mean, absolutely vintage. The opening drive of the game, they get down inside the Michigan 5. They've got 4th and goal at the 1. What do they do, Tony? Which play do they run? They call the delay of game penalty. Not what I would have gone with personally, but then it's at the 6, and then they miss the chip shot field goal, and it's like, boy, you're at the 1-yard line and you get 0 points out of it. Not great. Right before halftime, it felt like, this is, I'm saying all of this, and yes, of course, Michigan played a significant role. Michigan got the goal line stand to get through the first 3 plays down there to put Michigan State in a place to Sparty know themselves on 4th and 1. Jonathan Smith, I have questions about your game management when you've got 15 seconds left in the first half and the ball's at your own 30. And yeah, you've got 2 timeouts, but there's 15 seconds left and the ball's at your own 30. Why are you running a play there? Every coach in the world takes a knee there and goes to the locker room. And that went from, okay, they're up 7-0 to, okay, now they're up 7-6 and Michigan's missed the PAT. So, okay, the momentum's maybe been blunt a little bit, to just gifting Michigan 3 points because, again, Michigan made the play in that moment to get the strip sack, force the fumble, set themselves up for a field goal right before halftime. But, you fail to get any points when you've got the ball at the 1. You give them 3 points there. I mean, there were plenty of other Sparty no moments kind of sprinkled liberally throughout the game, but man, oh man, there were some. Tony, choices were made. The Michigan State rivalry, choices were made.
It's almost like Jonathan Smith forgets where he's coaching and forgets the ghosts in the room when you are Michigan State, and you don't want to push things. If you can get to halftime, just get to halftime. And I understand wanting to be aggressive. There's times and there are places, and clearly that didn't end up being one of them, especially if you're going to let Josiah Stewart track down your quarterback who can run, but so can Josiah Stewart. And that Aiden Childs, for no lack of a better way to say it, is a turnover waiting to happen at times. And that was going to be one of the keys in this game. Which of these quarterbacks, for Aiden Childs versus whomever for Michigan, these are, I guess, 4 turnover-prone quarterbacks. And so whoever was not going to turn the ball over was going to have the better opportunity to win the game. And maybe they felt like, well, what's the worst that can happen? Well, the worst that can happen happened. And so now you have to deal with it. And that first quarter overall, they had the ball for like 13 minutes, got 7 points out of it. So props to all you time of possession people. Good job, good effort. Something we've seen recently is Michigan getting run on, and they got run on in this one. Nate Carter, who made one of his best games, 118 yards rushing on 19 carries, was able to make players miss and pick up yards and look pretty good doing it. So Michigan State finished with 163 yards rushing on 3.9 yards per carry, which you lose. Some of that is due to 30 yards lost in sacks. But Michigan rushed for 3.8 yards per carry. So like you won the yardage battle and you're able to move it, but you didn't capitalize when you could. As we said, 2 of 4 in the red zone, not going to be good enough on the road almost ever. And so they're going to come out of this game kicking themselves. Michigan, meanwhile, will come out of this game with some semblance of momentum for however long that will last, given the fact that Oregon is coming to town. So enjoy that one. But overall, with this Michigan defense, they didn't have Will Johnson. So it'll be interesting to see if he's done or just done for now or just done for this week and we'll come back. There was enough there for Michigan State to capitalize and they just didn't. Like you said, give Michigan some credit in that. But I didn't see anything from the Michigan defense that has changed my opinion that they can be had. Now, watching the Ohio State offense has changed my opinion that can Ohio State have them, basically. They can be had, but can Ohio State take it? I don't know. But anything from this Michigan defense that stood out to you that necessarily hasn't or that you wanted to touch on?
Well, I think I'd look at the sack adjusted rushing yardage totals. And if you take out the sacks, and we'll get to the sacks later because, yeah, of course they count too. But if you just look at the rushing totals without those sack yardage, Michigan State outrushed Michigan by a full yard per carry.
Yeah.
Generally, if you do that, you win this game. That is, this is a game that I think is similar to the Ohio State-Michigan game where if you can run the ball, if you can control the line of scrimmage, more often than not, you win the game. You really kind of have to do something stupid to lose the game. Michigan State was more than obliging in terms of doing something stupid to lose the game. So that's how it ended up playing out. But, 6.2 yards per carry for Nate Carter is significant. And it was not like he had one run of 80 yards and that really skewed everything. It was a pretty methodical move the chains. Their drive chart was fascinating because it was either they had an incredible drive or they did absolutely nothing. 14 plays, 68 yards to start the game. 9 plays, 62 yards, touchdown, second drive. And then 5 plays, 9 yards, 3 plays, 9 yards, 2 plays, 9 yards, 1 play, -2 yards right before the half. And then second half, boom, 10 plays, 67 yards. Another long, methodical drive ends in a field goal. 3 and out and a punt. And then 13 plays, 75 yards for a touchdown. And then 7 for 35 at the end of the game. But so they had 4 drives where they went at least 60 yards and they got 17 points out of them. I mean, that's okay, but that's it. That you have to be able to score. If you move 60 yards, you should be scoring on all of those drives, and you want to be scoring touchdowns on more than half of them. So yeah, it was a game where you felt like Michigan State is a fine offense. Michigan State feels like they're the most average Big Ten offense there probably is out there where, they can run the ball a little bit. And Nick Marsh is a very exciting player. You saw him make a really, really nice catch for the touchdown on that last scoring drive for the Spartans. They sort of have the pieces. Aiden Charles, you can tell, like the talent is there. He's young. He's not ready yet. It's there. Michigan I expected a little more out of Michigan in terms of being able to control Michigan State on the ground. The passing was the passing, 17 to 23, 189 yards, a touchdown, 74% completion for Aiden Charles. That's a solid game. That really is. But they didn't like gash Michigan through the air. There weren't a ton of like enormous plays through the air, a couple 30-yarders, 120-yarder. That was kind of it. This was just a game where Michigan looked okay on defense. When I see a team like Michigan State running the ball like that on them, I do wonder, there's been a lot of pressure put on that defensive line, especially the interior of the defensive line. You wonder if you're starting to see them wear down a little bit. And if you are, I don't know that that's something that's necessarily going to get materially better as the year goes on.
Well, and you said you need to score touchdowns on your 60-yard drives. Michigan had 3 of them, and they scored touchdowns on all 3. So that and there's your difference in the game. It was interesting to watch the success that Michigan State had, or Nate Carter specifically, on the ground. And then they were pretty careful with the football overall when they're throwing it. I do really like some of their playmakers that they've got. But Michigan didn't break, and it's one of those things where you hold on, you wait for your moment, and then you make the most of it. And they did. And I think they also did something as we moved to the Michigan offense that was the key to the game. And it's something that they kind of have gone away from, I think, and that's Alex Orji running the ball. And so Orji rushes for 64 yards on 6 carries. All of that comes in the second half. 2 carries on a touchdown drive, 2 carries on another touchdown drive, and then 2 carries on the drive where they kneeled it down. So this guy was instrumental in getting the win for Michigan. And the ability for him to run the ball and make this running game look better than it is, because Donovan Edwards, 24 yards rushing on 9 attempts. Kalel Mullings, 18 yards rushing on 13 attempts. That's terrible. And the fact that you can get Orji to do what he's done is he was a lifesaver in this one.
Yeah, and it feels like Michigan can't do anything the easy way at this point. You can't just line up and run the ball. You can't just drop back and consistently throw the ball in chunks down the field, even short to medium-sized chunks. You can't they can't do anything on easy mode. Everything has to be okay. You got to run. You got to bring in the running quarterback. Otherwise, you can't run. And this goes back to a lot of the stuff that we talked about earlier in the year, where it's like, okay, how long is this going to work? Yeah, it worked in this case, in a real situational thing where they brought Alex Orji in for a drive or 2, or situationally down at the goal line, and it worked. And that's how they used him against Ohio State last year. Right after halftime, they came out and they had a nice drive with Alex Orji. But that's not something you can do every drive. I can say that with great confidence because we have seen them try to do it with Alex Orji every drive, and guess what? It doesn't work. So that's okay. There's your change up. That gets you maybe a drive where you score. That's one, okay. And then when you score in the passing game, it's a toss sweep to Donovan Edwards where he runs the Michael Wiley halfback pass play and throws to a wide open Colston Loveland. And then the other touchdown they got through the air was Colston Loveland. This was one of the great Sparty knows of the game. Colston Loveland just kind of releases. He makes like the slightest, hint that he might be considering blocking someone, and then releases. And Michigan State's safety just goes blissfully running straight towards the line of scrimmage, like, oh well, certainly the only guy who can catch passes for this team is not going to be going out to catch a pass in this case. No, sir. I'm going like, oh, what's he doing? And you had 2 wide open Colston Loveland touchdowns. There's nothing here that says they can do any of this stuff consistently. And, Ohio State's run game on Saturday, you brought the Buckeyes up, so I'll bring it up too. 2.9 yards per carry for Quinshon Judkins, 2.5 for Travion Henderson, and Donovan Edwards, 2.7 yards, Kalel Mullings, 1.4 yards. that's, Ohio State has the passing attack that they can kind of go, well, if the running game's not there, you can throw something together through the passing game. Michigan really doesn't. It's, hey, you got to run a flea flicker to get the ball down the field 25 yards. Hey, you got to run a halfback pass to get a touchdown. They can't just do it. It has to be, okay, we got to come up with a creative way to do this. And this is going to work once. You can only run the flea flicker so many times. It's, they have done it to a certain degree, but that has turned into when they had AJ Henning at Michigan before he transferred to Northwestern. There was the one AJ Henning end around every game, and it would go for exactly 16 yards. And then, okay, cross that off the list, and we'll break it out next week. But you've used it now, so now what are you going to do the next time? Everything that Michigan does right now feels like nothing comes easy for them, and that's against a defense that's okay. Maybe like mid-level Big Ten, okay. That's a defense that gave up to 38 points to Iowa last week. So if you're getting 21 off of them or 24 off of them, it's not great.
Davis Warren gets the start, as I said, 13 of 19 for 123 yards, 1 touchdown, long completion of 23 yards. Tyler Morris, Michigan wide receiver, had that catch for 23 yards. Or actually, I think that was that was from Warren. I believe that is now the second longest reception for a Michigan wide receiver this year. Next to the current long reception is 31 yards. But the interesting thing about Warren in this one is, after I watch it and watched it yesterday and today, I'm trying to think back on his performance, and there's really. Is it a good thing that there's nothing memorable about a Davis Warren performance? Like, this is the best thing you can say about his performance so far this year to any of his starts. I don't recall anything that I saw from him, and that's not generally the case for any of these Michigan quarterbacks. So kudos to you. It's like, if you don't notice the refs or the umpires or, the right guard, good job. But when you do, oh boy. And so I guess good job by Davis Warren, but the potential is still there for him to do what he's done, because we've seen that. But I don't recall any crazy throws that should have been intercepted. Like previously, he threw 3 and he could have thrown 5. It's like, well, I don't remember any of those.
No, I don't think he had any bad plays. He didn't have, he had a couple good ones. One of the touchdown he threw was the one that I was talking about earlier, where the safety just completely blew the assignment. Other than that, I think the Tyler Morris reception, the 23-yarder, that might have been the flea flicker. If not, it was the Peyton O'Leary one that was 15 yards. But it's what I was saying before. Like there's nothing that this team does on offense other than make their coaches have to get real creative. They can't. They just right now are not doing anything consistently or reliably. It's just, okay, you're not quite drawing something up in the dirt, but you've got to, if the 3 clever things that you have in the game plan don't work, you're in trouble, because it has been, well, maybe someone can break off a big run. Someone can, break a tackle at 6 yards and turn it into 60. That's been one of the ways that they've been successful this year. Maybe Will Johnson has a pick 6. That's been one of the ways they've been successful this year. Maybe the trick play works. That gets you a touchdown somewhere, or that gets you a big gain somewhere. There's just nothing that's coming easy right now. And if nothing's coming easy when you're playing the Minnesotas and USCs and Michigan States of the world, it feels to me like the Oregon thing next week. I know Oregon's going to come cross country, and they're coming off of a couple significant opponents. So we'll see how that goes for them. But it feels like it's not going to probably come very easy for Michigan against Oregon, and I don't know if they're going to be able to hold the opponent. If they're going to be able to hold Oregon to 17 points, because. What is the magic number that an opposing team can score? And you go, if you only tell me that this team got to X number, I'm going to say that they almost certainly won the game against Michigan.
If it's a good team, I would say 28 and feel pretty good about it. If it's a bad team, 31, 34, I feel very good about it. But what is Michigan scoring next week? Because at 20s, you're thinking, well, you're going to need some help against a competent defense, and knowing that part of the offense now, again, is getting Alex Orji involved, which means now when he's in, you kind of focus on him. And then can he complete those passes if he's tasked with it, which I don't know that he's going to need to be. They're going to have to take some swings next week because they're going to need every big chunky yards that they can get. But I don't foresee, like, when was just try to look real quick. It's been a while since Michigan has scored 30 points this season. In fact, only once now is the season opener, 30-10. So I guess I'll change my answer. If you score 21 points against Michigan, I feel like it's certainly going to be a game in the fourth quarter, one way or another.
Yeah, I think, to me, the number is probably 27 or so, because it feels like anything over 24, to get to 30 in that season opener against Fresno State, I think that involved a pick six. Mm-hmm. So, if the offense is scoring in the low 20s pretty consistently, I don't think you need to get much higher than 27, 28 to feel reasonably confident in a win. We should also talk about the special teams, because it has felt like for a decent chunk of the year that Dominic Zavada is just automatic, and he's an incredible weapon that they have. They got a field goal blocked 2 weeks ago, and then now they had a muffed extra point, and it just looked like a bad hold on that one. It was not a Zavada issue. But I think that has to be a little bit of a concern where this is a team where nothing is coming easy and nothing is automatic. And the one thing that's automatic is the kicker. And now that's no longer automatic. The punting, Tommy Doman continues to be just shy of a disaster, 36.6 yards per punt. I mean, you can punt and play field position, but you got to be able to punt. And they don't feel like they have a consistent performance at all out of the punter position. And when you're trying to win all of these really fine margin games, because how many games have they won that have been very close with 5 minutes to go? I mean, the Fresno State game was close. Fresno State was driving for, I think, a potential tying or go-ahead score. Why am I doing this off the top of my head when I can pull up the schedule? It has been close constantly this year. They have not had any easy wins for the most part. And you have to be able to do the little stuff if you want to win these fine margin games. Fresno State, that was close-ish, at least into the third or fourth quarter. Arkansas State was not as close as the score indicated. USC was very close into the final minutes. Minnesota was very close in the final minutes. They lost to Washington. They lost to Illinois. Michigan State was close in the very final minutes. I mean, Michigan State had the ball in Michigan territory with a chance to tie or potentially score the touchdown and try and go for the win at the end of the game. And they're just, every game is so fine margin. You can't have little mistakes, because in those games, little mistakes kill you. Little mistakes killed Michigan State on Saturday. I mean, we talked about all the 60-yard drives and not getting points out of them. They were in Michigan's red zone 4 times, missed a field goal, scored a touchdown, and then had the last possession end on downs. You're in the red zone 4 times, you only scored twice. That's a disaster. And they still only lost by 7 points. Michigan feels like they were a little bit fortunate to get out of this one with a win.
Oh, definitely. And they'll take it and run with it and try to regroup and do something to build on for next week. You mentioned Tommy Doman. He's the holder, and so he's dropped the snap 2 weeks in a row, I believe, and punted has not reached 40 yards per punt in the last 2 games at least. Fortunately for them in this game, 3 of his 5 punts went inside the 20, so there's a location situation there. But like last week, he averaged like 35 yards a punt, and none of them were inside the 20. So there were no pooches. They just ended up that way. And you can't have it. And they were fortunate to get away with it. And this one won't be as fortunate next week, I would assume. And moving forward, let's also, since this is Michigan State, as expected, the reason everybody showed up, there was a fight at the end. Didn't need to be any tunnels that happened out on the field, on the sideline. A little fracas at the end with the victory formation. Things finally got settled and split up. And as I'm watching this and seeing everything, the teams get split up, I realize that there's one Michigan State person still inside this circle of Michigan people and Michigan players. And it certainly looked like a situation that Michigan fans cannot possibly be happy with, to see something so possibly violent going on the field between these two teams. I mean, it's abhorrent.
Well, I went back. I turned the game off when Michigan State got stopped. I flipped the channel over to whatever else was going. There was something else that was a pretty good. I think it was a Texas A&M LSU game. So I flipped the channel over to that. So I didn't see the end of it, and I didn't see the fight live. I went back and watched it later. A couple of years ago, everyone couldn't wait to tell you how, well, this is all Michigan State's players starting this and all that kind of stuff. It is very hard to read this as anything other than, hey, Colston, there was a little bit of pushing and shoving, and that happens at the end of a lot of these games. It didn't really pop off until Colston Loveland headbutted the player from Michigan State, the Mason, I think was his name. That's one piece. I had not noticed until, I hadn't paid any attention to the Twitter conversation around this after the game, and then went back, and it was like, it looked like Khalil Mullings was, there's something going on under Khalil Mullings. I don't know who's there. I don't know what exactly is going on, but you could look at it as a kicking or something like that for whoever is down there. And I went back to check what was the conversation around that. And of course, it's all Michigan State fans saying that Khalil Mullings should be thrown in prison forever, and Michigan fans saying that no, there's nothing going on. Look, if there was something going on, someone would have asked about it. Very obviously something happened. I would love to hear an answer on that. I mean, the problem around this is that 2 years ago, you had a similar incident, and it was in the tunnel, and everyone made a big deal about it. And so then you had criminal charges filed. So now you have this precedent that, well, if you have this between these two teams in this stadium, then then you have to, are you getting the prosecutors involved? And this is one of these, be careful with the precedents you set around these kinds of things, because there was this big moral panic around it the last time. And yeah, it shouldn't have happened. And yeah, there are obviously issues around it the last time. There are some issues potentially around it this time. I'll be very interested to see what comes out of it, if anything, because there's going to be a bunch of video of it. There's going to be a bunch of video, there's the TV video, but there presumably are other people, other angles of video and all that. I'll be interested to see what comes out of that, because it feels like we there's potentially a conversation to have based on the conversation that happened 2 years ago, but the conversation has not happened yet. So I guess stay tuned.
Yeah, I tweeted shortly after it happened that I hope everybody is prepared for second by second video from Michigan State accounts all over Twitter and all of the Michigan players who are involved and screen grabs and all of those things. You can expect that throughout the coming week, and until justice is served, as we all know. So Michigan now, as we said, has Oregon coming to town. Then they go to Indiana. Then they get to take a week off to lick their Hoosier wounds, perhaps. And then they host Northwestern, and then they head to Ohio State. They are going to make it to a bowl game, Tom. I think we would both agree you're not going to lose to Northwestern, so you'll be bowl eligible then. And then you come to Ohio State, and based on the way the Buckeyes played on Saturday, I'm not prepared to say that they can't be beaten in this game, that they can't lose this game, because I saw Nebraska lead in the fourth quarter. So at this point, I'm able to believe any kind of outcome. Now, I'm expecting Ohio State to win that game, but got to bring things down a little bit after seeing that. Then they may ramp right back up and go, but we'll talk about it on an upcoming show. But based on that offensive line, I'm not going to put too much stock in pretty much of anything right now.
No, I think you look at what's the best unit on Michigan's team. I'm going to say it's the defensive line. What's the worst unit on Ohio State's team? I'm going to say it's the offensive line. Well, right there. There's your problem. That is the potential I'm not picking Michigan to win the game by any means right now, but because I think if you look at most of the other matchups, you'd probably go, yeah, I'll take Ohio State in pretty much all of those. But you can certainly see a path to win if that happens. Michigan's field goal kicking, bad holds or snaps the last couple of weeks notwithstanding, Michigan's field goal kicker is clearly having a better season than Ohio State's field goal kicker. So now you've got a couple things you're kind of looking at. And in a close game, winning at the line of scrimmage, being able to make your kicks, like that's all stuff that potentially matters. So, I think that the fact that we're having this conversation probably says a lot more about how Ohio State played this weekend than how Michigan played. But I think you're exactly right to have that conversation. The real conversation, Tony, is which quarterback starts for Michigan in that Ohio State game and which quarterback plays the most snaps in that game in Columbus. Because I feel like you could talk me into several different answers for a couple of those things.
Well, and I would not expect Davis Warren to play as mistake-free these next 2 weeks. So does it become a situation where he's made so many mistakes? Now they've got to try the next guy. I think they will continue to mix in Alex Orji, and hopefully that helps them with the running game. But yeah, I'm not ready to pick a starter in that one by any means. So there you go. If you want to hit the thumbs up before we go, we'd appreciate that. If you're watching on YouTube, you can always find us at youtube.com/Buckeye Huddle. Hit the bell to be notified. Subscribe to the channel if you have not. I don't know why you wouldn't. And of course, find us over at BuckeyeHuddle.com. Become a premium subscriber over there. First month, just $4.99. Sign up. Check out everything behind the paywall. Say hello to us there on the Buckeye Huddle message board presented by Jeff Ruby's Columbus. So thank you all for tuning in, and we will talk to you guys later.